We're in the middle of this long speech of death. He's trying to convince Savitri, I, death, am all. There is no other God. And he says that he is formless. I have no body and no tongue to speak. Because you called me to wrestle with thy soul, I have assumed, I have put on a face, a form, a voice. So I'm going to read on from there to the end of the canto. But if there were a being witnessing all, how should he help thy passionate desire? Aloof he watches, sole and absolute, indifferent to thy cry, in nameless calm. His being is pure, unwounded, motionless, one. One, endless, watches the inconscient scene where all things perish, as the foam, the stars. The one lives forever. There no Shraddhavan changing was born, and there no Savitri claims from brief life her bribe of joy. There love came never with his fretful eyes of tears, nor time is there, nor the vain vasts of space. It wears no living face. It has no name, no gaze, no heart that throbs. It asks no second to aid its being or to share its joys. It is delight, immortally alone. If thou desirest immortality, be then alone sufficient to thy soul. Live in thyself. Forget the man thou lovest. My last grand death shall rescue thee from life. Then shalt thou rise into thy unmoved source. But Savitri replied to the dread voice, O death, who reasonest? I reason not, reason that scans and breaks, but cannot build, or builds in vain because she doubts her work. I am, I love, I see, I act, I will. Death answered her one deep surrounding cry, know also, knowing thou shalt cease to love and cease to will, delivered from thy heart. So shalt thou rest forever and be still, consenting to the impermanence of things. But Savitri replied for man to death. When I have loved forever, I shall know. Love in me knows the truth all changings mask. I know that knowledge is a vast embrace. I know that every being is myself. In every heart is hidden the myriad one. I know the calm transcendent bears the world, the veiled inhabitant, the silent Lord. I feel his secret act, his intimate fire. I hear the murmur of the cosmic voice. I know my coming was a wave from God, for all his sons were conscient in my birth. And one who loves in us came veiled by death. Then was man born among the monstrous stars, dowered with a mind and heart to conquer thee. In the eternity of his ruthless will, sure of his empire and his armored might, like one disdaining violent, helpless words from victim lips, death answered not again. He stood in silence and in darkness wrapped, a figure motionless, a shadow vague, girt with the terrors of his secret sword. Half seen in clouds appeared a somber face. Night's dusk tiara was his matted hair. The ashes of the pyre his forehead's sign. Once more a wanderer in the unending night, blindly forbidden by dead, vacant eyes, she travelled through the dumb, unhoping vasts. Around her rolled the shuddering waste of gloom, its swallowing emptiness and joyless death, resentful of her thought and life and love. Through the long fading night, by her compelled, gliding half seen on their unearthly path, phantasmal in the dimness, moved the three. Time election will begin.
But if there were a being witnessing all, how should he help thy impassioned desire, aloof he watched soul and absolute indifferent to thy cry in nameless calm. His being is pure, unwounded, motionless one.
Thank you. So here there comes a change. He's been saying, I am the nameless nothingness, carrying all. I'm the illimitable, the mute alone. But now first of all, he just admits a possibility. He says, if there were a being with a capital B, who is witnessing, watching everything, how could he help you? You with your passionate desire, this intense desire you have to get Shraddhavan back. If there is such a being, he is aloof. He keeps at a distance. He's watching, all alone, absolute. He doesn't care about your cry. He's there, separate, at a distance, in his nameless calm. His being is pure, unwounded, motionless, one. This is almost an Upanishadic description of the one. Pure, unwounded, motionless, one. He's going to continue to speak about this one, the one without a second. This is a very, very basic.
His being is destructive.
If there were a being, yes, and this he now, it's the one without a second, the fundamental reality proclaimed by the Vedanta. So,
595.
yes.
When he says, half seen in cloud appeared, that if it is Shiva, it was told last time. So could it be this? His meaning?
I don't think so, Shamana. He's speaking about that one formless, nameless, whatever it is, Brahman. And he says, he doesn't care about you. He's aloof. He's not involved in his creation. So this is one development of Vedanta, that one, that Brahman, has nothing to do with the world, that it's just an illusion, and that we can't pray to him, that formless one. No. There have been great seekers and teachers who have believed this, felt this, that that one is so far from us, so much higher than us, that we can't ask anything from him, the Supreme. So this is a kind of illusionism that Sri Aurobindo does not accept. But here he puts that viewpoint into the mouth of death. Sarojini, you'll read?
One endless watches the inconsonant
Scene.
where all things perish as they form the stars. The one life
Lives.
lives forever. no Shraddhavan changing was born, and there no Savitri fell from brief life or
bribe.
bribe of joy. Their love came never with his full eyes of stars.
Tears.
Yes.
Fretful eyes of tears.
Yes. Not time is there, nor the vain has of space.
Thank you. So he says, there is that one. Now he doesn't say maybe, now he is stating it in a positive way. That one who is endless, eternal, infinite. He's just watching this inconscient scene. The scene, like a scene in the theatre, where everything is going on without consciousness in this material universe. In this inconscient scene, everything perishes, everything dies. No? There are things that live for a very short time, the bubbles on a wave, foam on water, but even the stars, they seem to last longer, but they will also perish. No? In this material world, everything that appears will die. But that one lives forever. But there, in that everlasting existence of the one, there's no Shraddhavan. Shraddhavan has nothing to do with that eternal being. Shraddhavan is a human being. He's born, he will die. He doesn't belong to that eternal, everlasting realm. And there's no Savitri, no, with claiming, as you are claiming, her bribe of joy from life. A bribe. A bribe is a payment somebody makes to you to do something which you wouldn't have done otherwise. No? So perhaps he means that this brief happiness that we experience, this just keeps us alive for a little while. No? That's the way that life makes us play our part in the world. This hope of a little joy. He says there's none of that there with the one. And there with the one, there is no love. Love never came there. Love suffers. He says love never came there with his fretful eyes of tears. Fretful, it's a word that we use of a miserable baby. It cries sadly. It's not angry, maybe it's hungry. It's fretful. It cries and won't be comforted. So he says love is like that, always making a fuss. There's no time there. There's no space there. That oneness is something completely separate from this universe where death rule, where everything perishes as the foam, the stars.
It wears no living face, it has no name, no gaze, no heart that throbs. It asks no second to aid its being or to share its joy.
Yes.
It is delight immortally alone.
Yes. So that's it. No? It doesn't have a face, it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have eyes that communicate, no heart that throbs. It is without a second. This is what the Upanishads say about the One. It has no second. It doesn't need anything else to aid it, to help its being, or to share its joys. It alone, forever immortal, is delight, the One. Bhavan.
If thou desirest immortality, be then alone sufficient to thy soul. Live in thyself. Forget the man thou lovest. My last grand death shall rescue thee from life. Then shalt thou rise into thy unmoved source.
Yes. So he says, Savitri, if you want immortality, you have to be alone. You must get rid of all attachments. You must forget the man you love. You have to live alone in yourself. If you can go on doing that long enough, then my last grand death shall rescue thee from life. As long as we have desires, we will go on being reborn again and again. As long as we act with intention, then we will be reborn again and again and again. But if you can become sufficient to thyself, if you can forget the man you love, then eventually my last grand death shall rescue thee from life. I will dissolve your whole individual being so that you don't exist anymore. And then there won't be any more of this life and this suffering. You will rise up to your highest state, to your source, to that oneness, that unmoved and unmoving oneness where you came from which you've been given this individual form. You have to dissolve all that, and then you can go back. That's what he means when he says, my last grand death. There are many deaths of the body, but according to this particular doctrine, this aspect of the Vedanta, the aim is to dissolve the individuality altogether. That's the last grand death, which is the real solution, according to them. But Sri Aurobindo doesn't accept this view, and Savitri doesn't accept this view. She has had another experience. No? Shamala, would you read?
But Savitri replied to the dread voice, O death, who reasonest? I reason not. Reason that scans and takes, but cannot build, or builds in vain, because she doubts her work. I am, I love, I see, I act, I will.
Yes. So that philosophy which death has been propounding, it's a philosophy, it's a fiction of the reason, what he is telling her now. If there's a being like that, then he's one, he's like this, he's aloof, he has no connection with the world. And so if you want immortality, you have to be like that too. But Savitri replies, she knows quite differently. She says, you are reasoning, you're proclaiming this philosophy. I don't do that. The reason scans, it looks at things, it breaks things apart, it analyzes them, but it can't put them back together again. It can't build really. Or it may do some building. The reason does build things like this philosophy, which he has just propounded, but it is also forced to doubt those buildings which it has built up by itself with reason. She says, I am. I know that I exist. I know that I love. I see how things are. And I act. I do what is necessary. And I have a will. I exercise my will. Because I know that I exist, I can do all this. If I doubt my existence, then I can't do anything much. Sergei.
Death answered her, one deep surrounding cry. Know also, knowing thou shalt cease to love, and cease to will, delivered from thy heart. So shalt thou rest forever, and be still, consenting with the impermanence of things.
No, let's stop there. So he says, knowing, have knowledge. So again, traditionally, that knowledge of the Brahman, it was believed to be something like this, that if you have knowledge, you will know about that one, or you will experience that one, and then you will cease to love. There will be no place for love in the oneness. You will stop wanting things. You will be set free from the longings of the heart. And then you will be at peace. You will rest forever. You will be still, unmoving, and you will accept the impermanence of things, that things don't last forever. They come into existence, they go out of existence. So I think he's misinterpreting the Vedanta a bit here. Knowledge doesn't mean only knowledge of the one. Actually, there are 4 great statements of the Upanishads. Thou art that. All of you are real. All of you exist. And I also exist. Soham asmi. I too am the Brahman. That I am the Brahman. You are the Brahman. All this is the Brahman. The one without a second. There's only one ultimately. Sudha, would you read?
But Savitri replied to man to death, when I have loved forever, I shall know. Love in me knows the truth of changing mass. I know that knowledge is vast in there. I know that every being is myself.
One more line.
In every heart is hidden the mild one.
Yes. So beautiful, no? So, I shall have complete knowledge only when I have loved forever. Love in me knows the truth that is masked, that is hidden and disguised by all changings. Things change, things look different, they take different forms, but there is one unchanging truth, eternal, limitless truth, which puts on all these disguises, is hidden by all these many changings of the phenomenal world. And I know that the true knowledge is a loving embrace. It accepts and embraces everything. I know that every being is myself. I am one with every being. I know that in every heart of every being is hidden the one who expresses himself as the many, the myriad, so many that they can't be counted. These are all expressions of the one. Will you read, dear?
I know the calm transcendent bears the word, the way inhabitant, the silent one. I feel his secret act, his intimate fire. I hear the murmur of the cosmic voice. I know my coming was a way from God.
So she has this knowledge, no? He told her no, but she has this knowledge already by experience. She hasn't learned it because anybody told her or taught her. She has it because she has experienced it. So she says, I know that it's the calm, transcendent, the one you are talking about. He's bearing, supporting the whole world. And he's not only supporting it, he's inhabiting it. He's living in all the forms of the world. He veils himself so that we don't see him inhabiting it. But he's the veiled inhabitant. He's the Lord, he's the ruler of all this, even though he rules silently. I can feel, she's speaking about her experience. This is not an abstract philosophical knowledge. I feel his secret act. I can feel him acting. I can feel his intimate fire, that energy, that dynamism, which is so intimate, it's so close to the heart of everything. And I hear the murmur of the cosmic voice. There's a voice filling the whole universe. Perhaps the whole universe has come into existence because of the singing of that voice. The one has chanted this sound, this original Om. The materialists talk about the Big Bang, but we can think about the universe beginning with this wonderful, immense, complex note, this Om, which is still resounding, which has brought everything into existence, and it is still going on, bringing more and more things into existence. The materialists say everything's been born in a big explosion, and that explosion, gradually all its energy will run out, and the whole universe will fall into darkness, all the stars will run out of energy, and our universe will collapse. But if we think that it hasn't begun with an explosion like that, that it has emerged out of this wonderful, complex, creative vibration, this sung note, which is carrying all infinite possibility in it, then we can't believe that the universe is just going to go out and burn itself up. It won't happen like that. And some mystics have described how they heard that cosmic voice. They could hear it. My own teacher, Amal Kiran, told me that sometimes when he was at his very best, then he could hear it. And he said it is like a kind of wonderful, beautiful hum of the mother rocking, lulling her child, the universe, nourishing it, loving it. Varadarajan.
For all his sons were conscious in my birth.
No, I think we have to start on the previous line.
Pardon?
I know my coming was.
Sorry. I know my coming was a wave from God. For all his sons were conscious in my birth, and one who loved enough came raised by death. Then was man born among the monsters of the word to the mind and heart to conquer the mind.
Yes. So she says, I know it. I have experienced it. That my coming here into this individual form, this is like a wave of energy from God. No? For all his sons were conscient in my birth. The sons, the many, many sons, there are many, many truths. No? We look at the stars and perhaps we think that they are just unconscious energy. But that's not true. Actually, these are blazing agglomerations of conscious energy. So that consciousness was at work when I, Savitri, was born. I think it is true of all of us. And when this birth happened, this birth of the universe, the one who loves in us, when we feel love, it is the Lord loving in us. He came veiled by death, but still it is He, the one. So out of all this, man, the mental being, the human beings were born here. In this material universe, we may say monstrous stars, these great... yes, I think she's expressing a feeling we may have about those great universal bodies, those suns, on such a vast scale compared with tiny little us, and with our world, that we might feel there's something terrifying about that vastness and about what we think is unconscious. It's only if we realize that they are burning, later on she will say it, that they are burning with my love. So, in this vast, apparently unconscious, empty universe, conscious beings, individual conscious beings like us were born, and we are dowered, we are endowed with or gifted with a mind and a heart to conquer thee, to conquer you, death, the principle of decay. We are going to overcome, man is going to be able to overcome that process of entropy, of negativity, of death. So this is a wonderful statement of spiritual experience. I would say of faith, but it's more than faith. She knows all this, not just believes all this. Joel.
In the eternity of his ruthless will, sure of his empire and his armored might, like one disdaining violent, helpless words from victim lips that answered not again.
Yes. So he's of course also eternal. And he has a particular role to play, and that makes his will ruthless. He has to stick to the pitiless. He has to stick to that role that he has to play. But he's also very sure of himself. He's quite confident of his rule, and that no little human being can do anything about that. He's sure of his strength, his armor, all his weapons. So, just like somebody who doesn't take any notice, for example, a conqueror, he doesn't listen to the curses or the words that his prisoners say against him. No. So he's disdaining. He doesn't care at all about those violent, helpless words that his victims speak about him. He doesn't bother to answer. He stands. Sorry, his next sentence. Patricia.
He stood in silence
Yes. Yes.
and in darkness shrank. A figure motionless, his shadow varied, girt with the terrors of a secret sword.
This is the face he puts on now. No. He's standing there. He doesn't speak. He's wrapped, enveloped in darkness. He doesn't move. He can only be seen as a kind of vague shadow. But he is girt around him. He has we gird on our sword when we are going out to fight a battle. No. A girdle is a kind of belt. So the warrior will gird up his strength before he goes out to fight. So that figure of death is girt with the terrors of his secret sword, that sword which can kill everybody. But something changes. Uday.
Clouds appeared this moment first. Night thus dear was his matter, and the ashes of deer his forehead hung.
Yes, thank you. So somehow where that God was, this vague shadow, comes this appearance that we can recognize as Lord Shiva. This dark face. Or perhaps I feel it is the beginning of Shiva, the one who purifies the world by liberation through destruction. He's the Lord who sets us free. But when we were looking at the pictures with Dr. Premananda Kumar once, she said, no, not Shiva, it's Rudra. The terrifying aspect of Shiva. Yes. Yes, yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, we can recognize him, no? A somber dark face, matted hair piled up, dark like night, and the ashes of the pyre, the ashes from the funeral fire are marked on his forehead. But I think this is the beginning of another change. We see this figure of death changing several times. And this time, when he comes into this Rudra Shiva form, it's the sign of a change. But otherwise, nothing changes. Praveen.
Once more, a wanderer in the unending night, blindly forbidden by dead vacant eyes, she travelled to the dumb, unhoping vast.
Yes. So they go on moving, wandering in that unending darkness. And it's as if there are hostile, dead, empty eyes all around, trying to prevent them moving forwards. She, Savitri, travelled. She went on moving through this vastness where there's no hope and there's no voice. The dumb, unhoping vasts. Alice?
Around her rolled the shuddering waste of gloom, its swallowing emptiness and joyless death, resentful of her thought and life and love.
Yes. So gloom again, this is darkness. And it's like a desert of darkness, a wasteland. And it's shuddering. You shudder from fear, actually. A movement of fear. So that darkness is rolling all around her. It seems to want to swallow her up. It's full of a joyless death. We might imagine a kind of joyful dissolution of ourselves into peace and bliss, but this is a joyless death, destruction. And all that, the darkness, is resentful of her thought and life and love. It hates her because she can think, she's conscious, she's alive, she's full of love. It feels very, very bad about that and wants to destroy her. Mila.
Through the long fading night by time compelled, leading heart sing on their pronounced path. Phantasmal in the time dimness moves the tree.
Yes. So here he says the night is fading. It's coming to an end. This night has gone on for a long time, but now it's beginning to fade. And they go on gliding. He used this word before. He said as if they're slipping, moving. It's not walking with human feet. They're kind of floating on their unearthly path. Half seen. Now it's not completely dark, like ghosts, phantasmal, in that dimness moved the three. Death, Shraddhavan, Savitri. And those three are compelled by her. It is her will which is driving them forward and onward. So that brings us to the end of Book 9. Yes?
The line 418, long fading night, the physical night.
This is not the physical night, this is the eternal night. And we wonder how the eternal night can fade, but actually it means, it represents a state of consciousness. And something has changed. No? This figure of Shiva, Rudra has appeared. Savitri has expressed great illuminating truths. Something is changing. And we will move next into the book of the double twilight. The night is fading.
But if there were a being witnessing all, how should he help thy passionate desire? Aloof he watches, sole and absolute, indifferent to thy cry, in nameless calm. His being is pure, unwounded, motionless, one endless watches the inconscient scene where all things perish, as the foam, the stars. The one lives forever. There no Shraddhavan changing was born, and there no Savitri claims from brief life her bribe of joy. There love came never with his fretful eyes of tears, nor time is there, nor the vain vasts of space. It wears no living face. It has no name, no gaze, no heart that throbs. It asks no second to aid its being or to share its joys. It is delight immortally alone. If thou desirest immortality, be then alone sufficient to thy soul. Live in thyself, forget the man thou lovest. My last grand death shall rescue thee from life. Then shalt thou rise into thy unmoved source. But Savitri replied to the dread voice, O death, who reasonest, I reason not. Reason that scans and breaks, but cannot build, or builds in vain because she doubts her work. I am, I love, I see, I act, I will. Death answered her one deep surrounding cry. Know also, knowing thou shalt cease to love and cease to will, delivered from thy heart, so shalt thou rest forever and be still, consenting to the impermanence of things. But Savitri replied for man to death, when I have loved forever, I shall know. Love in me knows the truth all changings mask. I know that knowledge is a vast embrace. I know that every being is myself. In every heart is hidden the myriad one. I know the calm transcendent bears the world, the veiled inhabitant, the silent Lord. I feel his secret act, his intimate fire. I hear the murmur of the cosmic voice. I know my coming was a wave from God, for all his sons were conscient in my birth, and one who loves in us came veiled by death. Then was man born among the monstrous stars, dowered with a mind and heart to conquer thee. In the eternity of his ruthless will, sure of his empire and his armoured might, like one disdaining violent helpless words from victim lips, death answered not again. He stood in silence and in darkness wrapped, a figure motionless, a shadow vague, girt with the terrors of his secret sword. Half seen in clouds appeared a sombre face. Night's dusk tiara was his matted hair, the ashes of the pyre his forehead's sign. Once more a wanderer in the unending night, blindly forbidden by dead, vacant eyes, she travelled through the dumb, unhoping vasts. Around her rolled the shuddering waste of gloom, its swallowing emptiness and joyless death, resentful of her thought and life and love. Through the long fading night, by her compelled, gliding half seen on their unearthly path, phantasmal in the dimness, moved the three.